Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in today's episode of The Hypnotist, we're going to be doing a hypnosis session designed to create a long-term investment perspective. Now, this metaphor that I'm going to use could apply to any asset in any asset class. It could apply to property. It could apply to a stock in shares in a company. But I'm going to use probably one of the most volatile and one of the most high performing assets over the last 10 years deliberately, because of the emotional roller coaster that someone would have gone on if they were affected, if their emotions were affected by the price of the asset. I'm referring here to Bitcoin because I have a number of clients that I work with that are high net worth individuals, and many of them have invested in cryptocurrencies. Obviously, Bitcoin is the most famous of the cryptocurrencies. It was the first and certainly the most recognizable, and it has gone on a rocky road, the journey that it's been on. And the reason I'm using this as a metaphor for the emotional roller coaster is because of its volatility, because it has reached the highs and it's reached lows comparative to those highs. And quite often what you see in the media is very different from actually what the mentality is of those long-term holders of an asset like that. So what I thought is using a metaphor of a time machine and a journey through time over the lifespan, and this asset is relatively new. It's only about 10 years old since it's been traded, and about 14 years old since it was created. So that's relatively young in the world of assets and financial tools. But I thought it would be useful to almost kind of imagine that you were there right at the beginning of Bitcoin, and you were going on this emotional roller coaster with those that were emotionally affected by price. And interestingly, the price doesn't affect the thing itself. It's just what the judgment is of the value of that thing at any one point in time. The thing itself is still a thing itself, but the emotional roller coaster is quite often linked to the price. So if you are curious about changing your own beliefs about assets and investments and risk and fears and all those kind of things, there will be a link nearby that you can schedule a consultation call. I actually have worked a lot with the thinking strategies attached to investing, purely because so many people are in this analysis paralysis and they don't invest in any assets because of belief systems about it being risky and those kind of things. But particularly at a time like now, where you have got high inflation, means that if you are holding cash, that cash is being eroded, almost like a leaky bath. The water is coming out of that, and you have less and less value in whatever cash that you're holding every single month, every single year. So it does make sense to hold assets. The obvious question is which assets to hold. But and I'm not recommending that anyone buy cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. It's just to highlight the emotional roller coaster so that it empowers you to kind of zoom out a little bit on whatever assets that you have, so that you are able to ride those waves, almost surf those waves, rather than be a victim of the waves, if that makes sense. So find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in a feeling of calm and relaxation. And as you exhale, allow feelings of tension, worry, or stress to leave your body. That's right. And in doing so, just allow yourself with each and every breath to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. That's right. And sometimes it's useful to just notice how good it can feel when you just breathe in and breathe out without holding on to feelings of tension, worry, or stress. You can just allow yourself to do what your body wants to do when you're resting. And if it's safe to do so, on the next outward breath, breathe in that resourceful feeling of relaxation. And then when you exhale, allow your eyelids to close, taking you into a deeper state of tranquility and concentration that enables you to really let go now. That's it. Deeper and deeper. Relaxed. And in this relaxed state, I want you to imagine what it would be like to go back in time. All the way back in time, I want you to imagine that you go back in time to the year 2008. At this point in time, it was around the time of the chaos, right at the beginning of the credit crunch. I want you to get a sense that back then, there was lots of fear, lots of worry. It was the beginning of a recession. Lots of stressed people, unemployment, businesses failing. And I want you to imagine back then in 2008 as it goes into 2009, just imagine that you knew someone that was really into technology. They were very academic perhaps, and on the cutting edge, had their finger on the pulse of new ways of looking at money and technology. I want you to get a sense of what it would be like to have heard back then, maybe in 2008, 2009, the very first time you heard the word Bitcoin. Maybe you were confused by it, you weren't really sure what it was. All you know back then is that it was this thing that was a currency that was purely digital, just created. And you don't think anything more of it. Maybe a year or two goes by and maybe it's 2010. And around this time, this word Bitcoin kept coming up in your mind. Maybe one of these smart people that you know thought it might be a good idea for you to just have some, just in case this thing grows and becomes significant in the future, but you can't spend it. You don't even know what to do with it. And just recall that back then in 2010, you asked someone how much it would be. And imagine you're surprised that they tell you that it's less than a penny. And then you start thinking, well, this is a new technology. A technology you certainly don't understand. You don't know how encryption works and all these things. But you kind of think, well, this is just a penny. And I want you to think what it would be like just to buy maybe 10,000 of these coins. There you are in 2010. And you think what it would be like to buy 10,000 of these at just a penny each. And maybe you'd bought that in pounds or dollars, and it's just £100 pounds, $100. An insignificant investment back then. And I want you to imagine that you knew just enough to know that you had to create some kind of wallet. There was a phrase, something that you had to remember or keep safe to know that you could access your 10,000 Bitcoin whenever you would want. And then I want you to imagine for several years, you totally forget that you even have this 10,000 Bitcoin. And then as time goes on, you start hearing things in the news, and maybe it reaches just a year later, £100 per coin. And at that point in time, maybe you get a calculator out and you start thinking, you bought these coins for just a penny and now they're £100. And you think your 10,000 coins just a year later now means you have £1 million or $1 million worth. You think this is crazy, and then people are telling you that you're a millionaire and you should sell them. Imagine that delight, that feeling of, wow, I have this million worth of currency just there in that moment. I want you to get a sense that you could feel elated. But imagine that you do nothing with that. And then imagine another year goes by. It's now 2014. And maybe it's January 2014, and it now reaches £600 per coin. Your 1 million worth is now worth 6 million worth. And you feel even more elated as your roller coaster of emotions ascends. Your £100 is now worth 6 million. And it feels magical to have 6 million worth. You're a multi-millionaire at this point, just a few years after buying them. It feels strange for you. And then, just a few months later in that same year, your 6 million has gone down, all the way down to just £150 per coin, and your 6 million is now worth 1.5 million. And part of you is still elated because you only spent £100 on this, but now you could look at it that you've lost 4.5 million in just a year. So you could feel devastated. If only you would have sold a few months earlier. And then imagine you do nothing for a few years, and then suddenly you hear a buzz of excitement. It's now 2017 and you're hearing that Bitcoin is now worth £1,000 per coin. Your 10,000 coins at £1,000 each now mean that you're worth 10 million. You could feel elated, but you just say to yourself, maybe. 2017 turns into 2018. But on the way there, it reaches a peak. Round about the end of 2017, maybe December time, the price reaches £14,000 per coin. And your 10,000 is now meaning that you have 140 million. People are telling you like you're one of the richest people that they know. And yet you say maybe. Because just a few months later, it starts to fall. First to 7,000 and then 5,000, and then within a few years, there it is, 2018, it's all the way down to 2,500 again. Your 140 million is now worth just 25 million. You've lost over 100 million worth of your net worth in a year. People are giving you sympathy, feeling sorry for you. You still have 25 million worth, but people are saying, if only you would have sold a year ago, you'd be worth 140 million. You just say maybe. Time goes on because a year goes by. It's now 2019, and then suddenly it's all the way back to 10,000. And your 25 million is now worth 100 million again. And people are saying, now you should sell. And you say maybe. Another year goes by. It's now 2020, March. It's gone all the way down now to £4,000 again, and you're feeling like all of this is an emotional roller coaster. You were worth over 100 million, and now you're worth 40 million. You just say maybe, and you think all the way back it only cost you £100 to have these 10,000 Bitcoin, and you haven't done anything with them. They were just sat there. You're the same person. And you've been on this roller coaster for a while now, and you do nothing, and then it's now 2021 turns into 2022. And I want you to imagine throughout that journey, right in the middle of 2021, in May, you were feeling ecstatic because it got to crazy amounts, or for you at least. I want you to get a sense that right there it reached £43,000, £45,000, and back then when you got your calculator out, meant you were worth $500 million. People are saying, now you should sell. I said, maybe. But just a few months go by. Things happen in China. They ban all the Bitcoin miners and it goes all the way down, relatively speaking, to just £20,000 per coin, and it feels like you've lost hundreds of millions of pounds, and yet you persist. And then November comes along and it hits £50,000 per coin, and you have 10,000 of these coins. You are now worth £500 million, or around about $600 million, almost making your way to a billionaire. You could feel ecstatic, but you feel there's so much more to your life than just money. Your purpose, your mission, your friends, your family, what you do that has an impact on the world, your character. And then time goes on and there are crisis after crisis that takes place. And then just imagine it's July 2022. It's gone all the way down to 15,000, and you think your $500 million is now worth 150 million, and you're thinking, if only I would have sold. Except you have a decade of experience to think back on. You start realizing that this trend seems to go up and then go down and then go back up again. And you start to wonder what the future may bring. All the times that people said that this thing would go to nothing and be worthless, and then if you'd have listened to them and sold, then when it was worth $500 million, you wouldn't have had that. And I want you to get a sense that nobody knows what the future will bring. Back in 2010, you didn't know that these 10,000 coins that you spent hardly anything on would be worth $500 million, and yet it was. And maybe the future is that it's worth a few million, and maybe it's worth a few billion, and it fundamentally doesn't change who you are. It just changes the resources that you have access to. There are internal resources and there are external resources, and external resources like money are only valuable if they're put to use. What could you do with that money? If you had $500 million or $1 billion, what would you do with it that would add value to your life? Would you travel? Would you retire early? Would you spend all day on a beach, or would you do something charitable, having an impact on the world? I want you to imagine two different futures. Imagine that you still have those 10,000 coins and you can go forward to two different futures. The first future is that you go 10 years into the future. It's now 2032 and some new technology has come along and meant that your Bitcoin is worthless. And I still want you to get a sense that you feel grateful for who you are, maybe your health, the choices you can make. I want you to get a sense that investing in anything is just delayed utility, delayed gratification. Life is a limited resource. So any investment is worthless at the point where you're no longer around unless you can create a legacy for other people. So take what you need to have the quality of life that you want, and think about your life is still valuable even if this 10,000 Bitcoin is worthless. And then entertain a different idea. Entertain an idea that 10 years from now, your 10,000 Bitcoin is worth 500,000 each coin, and you have 10,000 of these coins. I want you to get a sense that you are a multi-billionaire. It's worth 5 billion. What would you do with that? Would you keep it in case it goes up? Would you sell some? I want you to get a sense that money is just money, and life is life. And it's the choices that you make that are truly important. Money doesn't change who you are, it just amplifies who you are. A good person with money can be even better. A greedy person will become more greedy. A paranoid person will become more paranoid. And I want you to get a sense that fundamentally, you are still you, and life is still life. The real value of having wealth is the choices you make with it, how to spend your time, what experiences you get to have in the world. And that's a reflection of what you value. If you value adventure, money gives you the ability to have adventures. If you value contribution, money helps you contribute even more. And I want you to get a sense that this emotional roller coaster that you're going on is just a clue to ride out the waves towards the future that you really want. And then imagine that you're back to the present with a new insight as to what you can do with your investments, what it makes sense to buy, what it makes sense to hold, what it makes sense to sell. But zooming out to the big picture, giving you a sense that what really is important is who you are and your impact on the world. All of this is just ideas within ideas, dreams within dreams, thoughts within thoughts, and you're now back in the present listening to my voice as I count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.